Robservations with Meyer Burnett.
Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your sommelier of sci-fi and cinema, your archbishop of Banterbury, your chancellor of cheerfulness, your evangelist of the imagination, and your existential Mr. Rogers. That's right, me, Robert Meyer Burnett, and I am broadcasting at you imagination connoisseurs, you members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community. Welcome to Robservations, episode number 608. 608, the show about something. 608, well, I'll tell you what that something is today. That something is Wandavision. Wandavision. Now, I got to tell you, I've been calling Kevin Feige my Lord and Savior, and I mean that not to offend anybody with delicate religious sensibilities, but it's a tongue-in-cheek thing that I've been calling him for the last 6 years since I was on Collider Heroes, starting in April of 2015. And I am continually amazed at the triumph that is the entirety of the MCU. Now, there's a lot of people out there that they don't love the MCU. I'll tell you flat out, I love the MCU. I love it. I've loved the MCU since I first saw Ironman. And let's face it, kids, we all went in a little dubious as to whether Ironman was going to work back in 2008. Remember, there was a time when Tom Cruise was maybe going to play Iron Man in a movie, but Robert Downey Jr., after his tribulations, I guess, knocked it out of the park as Tony Stark, and of course, the MCU was born. And what's interesting, you know, I've often said this before, but Kevin Feige, he's an imagination connoisseur. He loves Star Trek. He's a fan of comic books. He interned at Richard Donner's office. He worked his way up, but he worked on 13 Marvel movies in various capacities, usually in a producerial capacity. 13 Marvel movies before he got to Iron Man. He got to see Ghost Rider, Sam Raimi's Spider-Mans, Bryan Singer's X-Men, Elektra, Daredevil. He saw things that worked, things that didn't work, and he honed his craft. He really learned what he was doing. And if you really think about it, if you go back and you look at some of his first producing credits, he's 2 decades into working on Marvel movies. The man knows his stuff. The man understands, I think most importantly, that if you're working on the Marvel Cinematic Universe, you turn to the source material and use that to guide you. Now, famously, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, they'll go back and they'll do Ed Brubaker's Winter Soldier run, terrific Captain America run. Now, they don't adapt it exactly, but they take a lot of inspiration from the initial comic book runs. The Age of Ultron series was not really, the film Age of Ultron didn't have much to do with the series, but definitely it was inspired by that. And they take their cues from the comic books. Now, one of the reasons that I have always loved the MCU is because it feels like what it was like to read comics when I was younger. And, you know, I'd always dreamed of seeing movies brought to life that sort of evoked the same feelings in me that reading comic books did. And the sprawling Infinity Saga, which comprises 23 movies if you include Spider-Man Far From Home, the whole story of Thanos. I mean, some movies are better than others, sure. Am I a fan of Thor the Dark World? It's okay. But even Thor the Dark World, as a, let's call it a middle-of-the-road Marvel movie, is still a pretty great fantasy film. Hugely enjoyable to watch. I really love the characters. The problem is it's not as well developed as I would want it to be. Iron Man 2, I think, suffers from the fact that it was setting up more of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and a lot of people don't like Captain Marvel. I like Captain Marvel, I think, a lot more than most. I enjoyed it. as a superhero science fiction movie, I thought it was fine. It was pretty good. But collectively speaking, what I love about the Marvel Cinematic Universe so much is I feel that there is authorship for all of the movies, even if, like, we've come to expect them all to be home runs. To me, the triumph of the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe is, of course, Infinity War and Endgame, two of the most hugely enjoyable fantasy films ever made, not to mention superhero movies, and you put them together, what a wildly entertaining, 5-6 hours at the movies that is, put those movies together. I never thought I would ever in my lifetime see anything like that that appealed to me both as an adult and makes me mindful of everything I loved when I was a child. And I think it's very interesting that the Marvel Cinematic Universe can appeal to me the way it does. And clearly, I'm not the only one. But Victoria Alonso, Louis D'Esposito, and of course Kevin Feige as the three musketeers, really, Kevin Feige being the one calling the shots, obviously. But that team of folks that he has there, his two consiglieres, whatever, lieutenants, whatever you want to call them, the three of them have created something unparalleled in entertainment history. Certainly with a box office take of $1 billion per film if you average it out. Meaning if you take the entire gross of all 23 movies, divide 23 into that gross, you wind up with basically $1 billion a film. This kind of financial success is unprecedented in Hollywood history. It's never happened. Never happened before. And what I find so interesting about all of it, not only are the films enjoyable, I love the offshoots, such as, of course, the Hot Toys figures, and the fact that not only are the movies, look, you might not love the movies as much as I do, and that's fine. There's obviously, you might like movies in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, some better than others, but what I find so interesting about them is they are, for the most part, so true in spirit to the original source material. Now, a lot of people, I know you comic book nerds like I am, are going to say, oh, but Rob, they take a lot of liberties with all of these things. And I'm like, well, of course, because they're being adapted into film form. You can't, comic books, it's like, I remember when the X-Men came out, everybody was complaining about the leather outfits and how come they don't look like the comic book counterparts. Well, the comic book counterparts, if they're directly, it's great because Wandavision is going to show you why the comic book, if you had comic book accurate costumes, why they don't play in real life, as we've seen in some of the previews with Vision and Scarlet Witch and their comic book accurate costumes. But one of the things that the Marvel Cinematic Universe has done that I don't think you can, it's not talked about very much, but it's something that I think cannot be taken for granted, and that is the costumes. The fun thing about seeing superheroes on the big screen is seeing superheroes on the big screen. And I think one of the most difficult things to pull off is a great superhero costume. And from the get, the MCU has nailed the costumes. Nailed. And that's what makes their Hot Toys so popular. Whether you're looking at Captain America's stealth suit that we first saw in Winter Soldier, or you're looking at Thor's outfits, or Loki's outfits, or Ant-Man's costumes, the costumes in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the actual superhero costumes, are fan-fucking-tastic. And they've figured out an aesthetic that feels plausible. It's something that they took the idea of what Brian was trying to do with the X-Men and make a sort of uniform. It's a team. You're a unit. The X-Men were a unit. When they went out into the world to do shit, they would wear their work uniforms, which made sense. They made sense in terms of within the realm of that world. They don't wear their X-Men costumes all the time, but when they go out in the field, they do. Well, what was interesting is how they took that, the Marvel Cinematic Universe sort of took a cue from all the superhero costumes we'd seen in the modern age. And I guess from the modern age, I'll go all the way back to Blade, because Blade in the first Blade had a kick-ass uniform as well. But the idea that you make uniforms that look functional in the real world, but they stand apart. Like when you're Thor, you're wearing an Asgardian uniform that's Asgardian armor, so to speak. The Spider-Man costumes look plausible. Everyone's costumes look plausible. Even Hawkeye with the color, it's of course, is it as purple? No, but they still use the colors that they take from that character right out of the comics, and they make it all work. And so there's a lot about the Marvel Cinematic Universe that I love. Is it perfect? Certainly not. Are the movies like Gone with the Wind or Lawrence of Arabia or Gandhi? No. But as far as entertainments go, hugely enjoyable films. And certainly, yes, some of their origin films can be a little by the numbers because you have to tell the origin of the characters. And I remember when I was a kid, I had a trade paperback, I think it was called The Secret Origins of Marvel Comics. And it was the origin stories of like Thor and Hulk and Spider-Man. And it was great. I read that book a million times. And so the origin stories have always appealed to me. But another thing that the MCU has done is the casting. The casting for the MCU, they have picked wonderful people. I know. Everyone's going to I know you don't like Brie Larson. I get it. But for the most part, the casting has been pretty spot on. And those characters work so well because, Paul Rudd as Scott Lang. Who doesn't love that? And they've done Evangeline Lilly is great as Wasp. And Michael Douglas, the people they've got to be in these movies have given them a heft and a legitimacy that you wouldn't normally get. Well, what I also love about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and it's perfectly exemplified in WandaVision, is how now after the Infinity Saga is put behind them, they're willing to do crazy shit. Because what are they going to do? Set up another 23-film saga over 10 years and basically do the same thing they've already done? No. The Disney Plus streaming service has given them a tremendous opportunity. Sure, we're going to be able to get the movies that we've always been getting, but now going into the streaming service and the platform, whether they're going to tell limited series, who knows if there's going to be a WandaVision season 2? I don't necessarily think there needs to be, because I would imagine after what we've seen after 4 episodes that it's a self-contained story. But I love that they can do that. It's like getting a miniseries. The Marvel Cinematic Universe is the ongoing book, and then these streaming shows are a limited edition miniseries or a limited series, which, again, taking a page from comic books, they're doing something that's absolutely, in my mind, wonderful. Now, I know Falcon and Winter Soldier was supposed to debut before WandaVision, but I have to tell you, maybe it was serendipitous that all of these things happened, that COVID happened. I can't think of a better way to announce a bold new direction, meaning you don't know where the Marvel Cinematic Universe is going to take you. And I think WandaVision coming out of the gate, there's been a lot of divisive opinions about the show online after the first 3 episodes. But, I was watching Jeremy Johns' review of episode 4 of WandaVision, because he hasn't been waxing rhapsodic about how great this show is. And I like Jeremy Johns very much as a person and as a reviewer. He's truly a great guy, and he's from the PNW, so that's the Pacific Northwest. And I watched his review, and he's on board. He loved this episode. It made him think. It got him very in a philosophical mood. But what I thought was so great about WandaVision is it was so different from what you expected, and it had this strange conceit. And I know I think a lot of people, it frustrated them, and they didn't quite get it, and they didn't understand it. All of that is swept away with episode 4, at least in my mind. Episode 4, and by the way, let me say, after the first week, I did tweet. I said by episode 5, everybody was going to be breathless with anticipation and loving this show. Well, I'll tell you, the first couple of minutes of episode 4 that aired, they showed us something, and I'm going to try and stay pretty spoiler-free for episode 4, other than the fact that I think everybody knows that the perspective has changed. We have been in the world of Wanda and Vision, and now we are outside of that world. and we're seeing things that and a lot of questions are answered, a lot more have been posed, but I think episode 4 really hammers home the point of just how good I knew this series was going to turn out well. I think that this show, again, is another triumph. I mean, they could have done something that was easy and given audiences immediately what they wanted from something like this. But the first 3 episodes and the way they've built into it, culminating in episode 4, this sort of slow burn with the revelations that came with this episode, I just, once again, I felt so incredibly satisfied because I feel the hand of creators that know exactly what they're doing. And that isn't that what we want from our entertainment? I mean, I counterpoint that with things like The Stand, which inexplicable to me, the choices that were made in The Stand, or back to Star Trek Discovery, a show that seems to actively disdain its longtime fans. I know it is for me. I mean, watching Star Trek Discovery became to me, it was like cultural vandalism. I'm watching something I've loved for my whole life being vandalized. Whereas you go back and you look at WandaVision, it's like, look, are they going to... They both reinvented the wheel and gave us the same kind of stuff, the chewy, nougaty goodness that we expect from an MCU show. And there was so much that I loved about this 4th episode and what it has to say and what it portends. It just I was overjoyed, and I'm watching this going, what a supremely satisfying entertainment I'm watching. And it's I'm going to say that it answers a lot of questions that people have, and I can't wait to see the next episode. Now, William Hughes wrote an article that came out in the AV Club. Now, the AV Club, I used to love the AV Club, and the AV Club is a website, and I really used to love the AV Club, but over the last couple of years, their focus has sort of changed. It's gotten a little different, but I figured I would share this article anyway because I wanted to talk about it. So this is published yesterday. It's by William Hughes, AV Club. WandaVision's Marvel Cinematic Universe roots undercut its puzzle box ambitions. The success of the Marvel Cinematic Universe is an undeniably complicated thing. A vast multi-billion-dollar clockwork creation of interconnected franchises, carefully deployed star power, and precisely timed scheduling, all backed by the production might of the world's largest and most omnivorous media conglomerate. The reasons for its success are a whole lot simpler, though. Marvel movies give people, a lot of people, what they want, exactly when they want it, and in regular and generous doses. Want to see Spider-Man swinging across New York with his surrogate daddy Iron Man cracking quips on the fly? You got it, fan. Want to see the Hulk get in touch with his inner rage, kicking 7 kinds of alien dragon ass? It's all yours, true believer. In the expertly machined satisfaction engines of the MCU, if there's a hammer on a mantelpiece in the first act, you would damn well better believe that Captain America is going to start swinging it in the third, or 11 movies later, as the case may be. And none of this is bad. Indeed, it's almost supernaturally satisfying. But that same urge to serve up a family-sized platter of dopamine to hungry audience is an impulse that now threatens to complicate the mega franchise's first official foray into TV. After all those other forays into TV, Disney's WandaVision. It's worth examining 3 episodes into its run what kind of show WandaVision is and what TV trends it's pulling from. Whereas Disney Plus's first major shot, The Mandalorian, achieved success by boiling its billion-dollar parent franchise down to its DNA, serving up a steady slew of well-made space-based adventure stories, WandaVision has quickly proven itself far more ambitious in the reference pool. Moved beyond the series' excellent, charismatic, and legitimately funny mimicry of classic sitcom tropes, and it's pretty clear the Marvel vision of a mystery box show, with lead characters trapped to varying degrees of awareness in a sort of epiphanic, invisible prison. It's Lost, but in soothing Brady Bunch color tones. Westworld with a laugh track. The Prisoner if number 6 was trapped in Dick Van Dyke's kitchen. It's a fantastic premise, honestly, one informed by Wanda Maximoff and Vision's complicated comic book history, as well as 70 years of beloved sitcom sandboxes for the show's cast and crew to play in. But it also sits in direct opposition to the MCU ethos, which can tolerate a mystery for exactly as long as it takes its antsiest audience member to start to squirm. To withhold information, to withhold anything, is counter to what turned these films into a pop culture institution. And that necessity to provide gives WandaVision the sense of a show being pulled in even more directions than its already bifurcated premise might suggest. Black and white trappings or no, WandaVision exists fully within the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and in the MCU, even the subtlety must arrive in capital letters. Hence, the most consistently distracting element of the show's first episodes, the decision to divide its visual presentation cleanly between the parts in service of its sitcom half and those firmly beholden to its mystery half. The occasional flashes of color that creep into the monochrome palette are obvious early on, but even more distracting is the camera work, which directly delineates itself between a classic multicam setup and one you might call a "hey, something weird is going on here" camera. You know the one in which we mean. It's locked to Fred Melamed's and Deborah Jo Rupp's faces during the dinner party sequence and ends with the show's first episode capturing every ounce of horror leaking through the edges of Rupp's hysterical laughter as her husband slowly chokes. After a whole episode of being kept at cool classic TV remote from the action on the screen, the sudden close-ups are claustrophobic, unnerving, and deliberately affecting. They're also, well, subtle. Part of the genius of the Marvel films is the universality with which they can be read. Hundreds of millions of people can go see an Avengers movie and walk away with almost identical comprehension of what happened on screen. For all the chaos of the battles and the dozens of named characters fighting it out, to the point that when the films do indulge in a bit of rare ambiguity, as with the time-crossed epilogue of 2019's Avengers Endgame, the debates that crop up online can be immediate and fierce. The franchise's clarity is a virtue, but not necessarily when there's a mystery afoot. WandaVision understands that it must, by the strictures of its genre, hide, obfuscate, and tease, but consistently does so by shouting, "Clue, go Google this clue," at the top of its lungs. It's as subtle as a bunch of magic rocks shoved into a golden mitten. Worse, these intrusions often distract from the legitimately wonderful work its leads are doing in their homage to classic comedy styles. None of this makes WandaVision a bad show, really, even a little. Paul Bettany has a genius for slapstick, that magic show, and Elizabeth Olsen is so good at projecting her inner Mary Tyler Moore that when she does allow the cracks to show, as in the moment in the third episode where the happy homemaker facade falls away and she briefly, heartbreakingly mourns her brother Pietro, it does far more to establish the show's true aims than a dozen Hydra or Sword logos slapped on home consumer goods ever could. But it does make for a lousy mystery. Lost, the show that helped codify the genre in modern TV, took a lot of flack over the years for not knowing where it was going for pretty much most of its running time. WandaVision has the opposite problem. You can almost imagine the spreadsheet it's pulling its meta-plot elements from, algorithmically sprinkling in a few details into the mix every week to keep the audience content. There's no mystery here, no possibility that uncertainty could possibly persist, just a rapidly diminishing list of things we haven't been shown yet. This is a Marvel show, after all, and in the MCU, satisfaction is always guaranteed. Again, this was an AV article that was published yesterday, and what was the name of the art? It was written by William Hughes. Well, William, nice article with, and I completely disagree with you. I don't agree with that take at all. What I think is the triumph of this show is it does all of those things that William was writing about, that the MCU obviously it aims to satisfy, and that mysteries are made to be solved, and they were giving us clues and they weren't being really subtle about it. But what was amazing to me is this fourth episode answers all of the questions that we had been posing for the last three episodes. And not only that, they were doing it, as Jeremy Johns also pointed out, we become the characters in episode 4 because we are asking the same questions that those characters are asking about what the hell is going on. And as they're doing that, they're solving all of these questions for us. We're getting all the answers we want, but at the same time, more questions are being posed. And in a way that harks back to shows like Lost or like Twin Peaks, but it's still the MCU. So even though we are definitely getting answers to the things that we're asking ourselves. There's huge overarching bigger questions now that not only we are asking, but the characters in the show itself are asking. So it all becomes sort of a very meta exercise. And I have to say, I think it's absolutely wonderful. And as I'm watching this, I'll tell you, it's not lost on me that they're doing Moon Knight. Now, as I've told you, I love the original incarnation of Moon Knight, that Bill Sienkiewicz and Doug Mensch were doing in the early 80s. But admittedly, that was a very Batman-esque take on the character. And as Moon Knight has progressed through his tenure since the 70s through the Marvel Universe, now multiple secret identities have become multiple personalities within Moon Knight's mind, and he has some serious mental issues. If there's one thing I can't wait for, is to see a Moon Knight TV series now that we've had WandaVision. I cannot wait. And with She-Hulk, I mean, if She-Hulk turns into a David Kelly-esque legal drama, I'm so here for that. And I think that what WandaVision is telling us is that we are what the MCU did so well, keeping us entertained. They are going to take chances, and we are going to see beautifully produced, beautifully written, beautifully acted. I mean, Paul Bettany and Elizabeth Olsen, I honestly, I hope they're nominated for Emmys, because the work they're doing is marvelous. And Elizabeth Olsen especially. I mean, look, it's no secret I have a bit of a crush on Elizabeth Olsen, but she is so good in this role. She is a very underrated actress, whether she's in something like Wind River or Marcy May Marlene. She's an incredible actress, and she is definitely bringing her A game. She's never been able to shine. She's never fronted an MCU movie. She's always been at least a co-star, but never really at the forefront of any of the movies. And for her to be front and center now, finally they realize that she is an Oscar caliber actor, as is Paul Bettany, and to have them front and center finally, well, it's very delightful. And I cannot wait to see what is going to be wrought as we move into episodes 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And I'm sure that, yes, are we going to get a more traditional, I believe, narrative? Sure, probably. But what they're doing, and if it's true, like the online speculation that Mephisto's behind this, meaning the devil, so the MCU is going to now conjure up, it's going to go full-on supernatural and say, yep, in our world, the devil exists. If it's Agatha Harkness, too, if that's who Catherine Hahn is playing, they're going full-on, which makes sense if they're going to bring in Blade and other characters into the MCU. Why not just start with the big guy himself and move down from there? I think, although I'm not convinced of that. I think that they're not ready. I said on the John Campea show, I'd be very surprised if they go that full-on supernatural. Once you bring the devil into the MCU, I mean, what's so great about what they were doing, I wondered this a lot. I'm like, how are you going to put Iron Man, Thor, and Captain America and make us believe they all exist in the same universe? That was my big question when the MCU was first founded, and they were going to start giving more of this to us. And I didn't know if were going to be able to do it. And that was the thing. I'm like, how can they do that? And lo and behold, they did. And they did it really well. So, we'll see. We'll see what happens. But I do think that WandaVision, with its 4th episode, becomes not just a great television show, but it becomes a terrific, terrific addition to the MCU. And it has added more. It has added more. I mean, my God, the fact that we're gonna, I can't even. I mean, we got to see things that you thought you might have seen in Endgame, but then you realize we've never seen that before. We saw the aftermath of this. I'll just tell you. I'll use one thing it's just the very beginning. It's not that big of a spoiler. But we get to see people coming back after Thanos' snap was reversed, after the blip was reversed, which you realize I mean, sure, we saw the people once they've come back, but we didn't see people rematerialize. And I think that was amazing. That was amazing to see that, because it's something like, oh, and it happens in a hospital, and you can see kind of the chaos and all of this, and they did such a great job. And to find out that one of our main characters was blipped, was a victim of the snap, and then we get that whole person's backstory, and we find out a lot. And of course, they've dropped all. Monica Rambeau, as everybody knows, was Captain Marvel before Captain Marvel, before Carol Danvers was Captain Marvel in the Marvel universe. And even her name, Photon, is another name that Captain Marvel had, is in this episode. So there's so many things that they're doing that they've added to the mythology of the MCU, even in this one episode. And you've got Kat Dennings coming back from Thor: The Dark World. I think that was the last time we saw her. And one of our favorite FBI agents from Ant-Man comes back. And they're bringing... It's just so much fun. And I just feel like I was watching today's episode. I watched it twice. I watched it back to back twice because I enjoyed it so much. And I just was... What a wonderful thing that these people are doing. Kevin Feige, the idea that Kevin Feige is our Lord and Savior, at least of epic fantasy narratives, remains unabated. His streak is probably one of the greatest in comic history. But how I wish, as everybody else is looking to the Marvel Cinematic Universe and like, oh, why don't we do that? Well, the reason you can't do that is because you don't have Kevin Feige, you don't have Louis D'Esposito, and you don't have Victoria Alonso. You don't have them. And the only way to have a great... I mean, can you imagine if there was somebody running Star Trek that was as knowledgeable about the original source material, and you could be building shows, you could have... I mean, yeah, we're going to get more... In my mind, we've had now 5 seasons of modern Star Trek shows, and none of them have been particularly satisfying. And if anything, they fly in the face of established lore in the Star Trek universe. Whereas I go back and I watch a show like WandaVision, they do something totally out of left field, and then in one half-an-hour segment, they tie it all back to the MCU expertly, I might add, and give us all kinds of deliciousness with which to move forward and look forward to. And I for one, am delighted. So I can't say enough how much I enjoyed this. And I think that if the MCU is going to continue deeper into its second decade of existence and their streaming shows, remember, when WandaVision's over, they're launching Falcon and Winter Soldier. I mean, if they give us shows of this quality every 2 months, my God, who knows where they're going to go? And I don't know, man, but I am one happy camper. I am one happy nerd. So thanks, everyone. I got to tell you, you've done me proud. Very, very excited. Can you tell I really had a good time with WandaVision? Because I did. And I'll tell you what else is fun. Let's see what you guys have to say. Victor Rosario Fermain is here. One day, Fermain, Victor, I hope I get your name right once. Dear Captain of the USS Imagination, in cinema, there have been thousands of attempts to portray intimidation with a simple phrase. Some stick the landing. Others are unwillingly laughable. For instance, every time I hear Christian Bale's "swear to me" in Batman Begins, it makes me chuckle. The phrase isn't funny, his bat voice is. The working title for Begins was, ironically, Intimidation Game. When an intimidating line works, those few words creep under your skin and you feel the temperature of the theater drop. When that cold magic occurs, the mood of the audience turns on a dime, and no one ever forgets that moment. That's why fans still quote Clint Eastwood's, "Go ahead, make my day." Arnold Schwarzenegger's "I'll be back." Robert De Niro's "Are you talking to me?" And Joe Pesci's "Do you think I'm funny?" WandaVision may not be a movie, but the protagonists are cinematic characters, and in my book, Lizzie Olsen's "What did you say?" in episode 3 join the pantheon of cold-blooded badasses mentioned above. I agree. Who would have imagined that such a sweet, delicate-looking lady could go to that dark place? What an amazing actress. As always, thank you very much for reading my letters, Rob. Victor Rosario from Carolina, Puerto Rico, USA. I have to tell you, when she said, "What did you say?" the entire tenor of the show changed. I mean, this is like, and you also knew that she was the big bad of the show then. So, yeah, I again, kudos to her. She's just amazing. And the way she can turn what she's doing, her different performances on a dime like that, it's pretty amazing. This one comes from CG. CG says, Rob, great episode today. There's so much I would like to say. I think that you were spot on about the Reddit investment stories. For years, different populations of people have been disenfranchised. This happened largely because various institutions turned a deaf ear to outcries from masses of marginalized people. Now, technology has empowered the marginalized, and they are avenging the wrongs of the past. What I most hope for is that the new Avengers don't forget that in any battle there's always collateral damage. Captain America Civil War began with Wanda attempting to stop a villain, and in the process she accidentally committed the exact same atrocities that she had joined the Avengers to stop. In their desire to correct the wrongs done to them, I hope these real-world Avengers find the self-control to always seek first to do no harm, at least to the innocent. Speaking of Wanda, we are super fans of the zaniness of Wandavision. I agree with the viewers' recommendations to Willow about possible classic TV to watch. One thing that stood out to me in the first 2 episodes of WandaVision was what true genius those old TV shows were. They made it look so easy, so campy, and so cheap. When I watched how much love and care those first 2 episodes of WandaVision were made with, I couldn't help but notice that something was missing. I couldn't put my finger on what it was. It was the difference between buying Coca-Cola brand Coke and Great Value Cola. They just weren't quite the same. I'm curious if you notice this. What do you think the missing ingredient is? It's not budget, effort, or technology. WandaVision certainly did their homework and poured the resources in. In my book, WandaVision made up for what was lacking with its quirky Twilight Zone vibe and unique story. It did make me pause and give a moment of appreciation to those great stories that came before us. So this leads me to my last observation and question. I love it when you talk about movies from the AFI list. We don't always realize the impact those movies have on American storytelling. For example, I was shocked the first time I watched It Could Happen One Night, and I realized that the trope where the guy can't get a ride but the girl can by showing a little leg first came from that movie. Everything we've seen since has been a take on that one scene that most people haven't even seen these days. Well, there you go. There's something that I should have learned from movies. Somebody asked me that yesterday. I think Willow asked me that yesterday. Other things I've learned from movies, that's definitely one, that it's easier for a girl to get a ride, to hitch a ride, than it is for a guy. Every time I hear you talk about the AFI 100 list, I want to hear your thoughts on what each movie's technical and or story contribution is to movie and TV storytelling. Would you consider this maybe just a movie a day for 100 days? We are seriously dying to know. That's actually a really good idea. I'll have to think about that, but that's a really good idea. Well, thanks, CG, for that. I think, it's very funny. I was watching people respond to the first episodes of WandaVision. There's a lot of people that were saying, well, this sitcom stuff isn't that funny. And people were taking it as it was supposed to be a sitcom, like for real. But really, the whole time we as viewers know it isn't a sitcom. We know that something weird is happening. And while they slavishly recreated those sitcoms, and I think they did a really good job, those episodes would absolutely have worked as standard episodes of any pick your sitcom, whether it was the Dick Van Dyke Show or whether it was Bewitched or whatever. You could have made those work, but the people that were looking at that as if they were supposed to work as an episode of a sitcom, well, it never would have worked as an episode of a sitcom, because we know that that's Vision and Scarlet Witch, and we know that Vision's dead, and we know that Wanda Maximoff has reality warping capabilities. So whatever weirdness is happening, it's out of the ordinary, and we're waiting for when the other shoe is going to drop. And that's just something that we already knew was going on. So this idea that somehow it didn't work out. I mean, I thought that it was brilliant. I mean, in the way that was done, and having grown up watching all those sitcoms, they were really, really, really good. I mean, what they did was pretty amazing. But the reason they didn't work entirely as sitcoms is that, well, frankly, they're just not sitcoms. There's something else going on. We know that going in. We're waiting to find out. We're looking for clues. We're not watching it like, oh, look, it's a sitcom with Vision and Wanda in it. No, it's like Vision and Wanda are trapped in a Twilight Zone sitcom universe. Why they're there, how long have they been there, are they going to get out, who are all the other people in the world with them? Well, we are given a lot of answers to those questions in episode 4, which is why, and it made episodes 1, 2, and 3 even that much more satisfying. And that's what if the series ended, if it was a cliffhanger, if it was only a 4-episode series, and the episodes end, or the series ended for the season the way it did with episode 4, I would have found the whole thing to be incredibly satisfying and not waiting. I couldn't wait until I see the next season, but in this case, I only have to wait another week to get episode 5. And I think you're right. I'm really looking forward to seeing the next episodes. So, can't wait. Tom Jr. Jackson writes in and says, "Greetings, Rob. As you may remember, my last letter was about animation, and today I thought we would talk about comedy. That's right. And which film do I want to talk about? Today we are revisiting 1993's film Grumpy Old Men, directed by Donald Petrie and starring legendary film icons Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau. That's right. The original Odd Couple make their return to the big screen in over 12 years. The last time they were on screen together was in 1981 Billy Wilder's film Buddy Buddy. Lemmon and Matthau played John and Max, two friends who have been battling each other with insults since they were kids, and end up fighting over who is going to date the widow who had moved in across the street. It's a fantastic film where you hear Lemmon and Matthau calling each other moron and putz. Now you're thinking this is a great main cast, but hold my wine. The cast rounds out with Kevin Pollak, Ozzie Davis, Daryl Hannah, Anne Margaret, Buck Henry, and rounding out the cast, the Penguin himself, Burgess Meredith. The film was a little flash-in-the-pan surprise that no one was expecting. It was released on December 25th, 1993, and made $70 million in the U.S. The film was written by Mark Steven Johnson, who is known for such films as Ghost Rider, Daredevil, Elektra, and many more. According to Kevin Pollak, Lemmon and Matthau ended up living together in the same hotel room. That's right, Unger and Madison were living together once again. Anne Margaret, who plays the widow across the street that the guys fight over, was only 52 at the time this film came out, and she looked amazing, and still does to this day. She was the perfect pick for the love interest in this film, and wonderful seeing her in a film. One of the highlight roles of the film was that of Burgess Meredith, who plays Lemmon's father. He plays the role of a dirty old man who really needs to get laid, telling Lemmon if he is not going to man up and mount the widow across the street, then step aside, he will. Meredith is so funny in this film that he leaves me in tears still to this day when I watch the movie. All in all, this film is about friendship, family, love, getting older, and fishing. I highly recommend this film be revisited if you're looking for a good laugh and if you're sucked into these guys as these characters. There's a sequel called Grumpier Old Men, and the main cast from the original film returns for this film with the addition of the lovely and stunning Sophia Loren. This film came out on December 22nd, 1995, and just like the first one, it is funny and lots of fun. This film made over $71.5 million in the U.S. I am a fan of comedy, and this is one of my favorite comedies, and it reminds me of watching films like this with my dad, and because of him, I got my love for film. He made me the imagination connoisseur that I am today. Well, Rob, I'll write again soon. The topic of that letter, well, here's a hint. It involves 20 pounds of lube and Shelley Winters. Just kidding. Or am I? Seriously, it involves James Stewart, and that's all you will get. The rest is on the DL. So until next time, remember, there's a film out there with a story you have yet to see, and all you have to do is watch it. Until then, have an okay day. Tom Jr. Jackson. Well, Tom, thanks for the letter. I love Grumpy Old Men. who doesn't? It's like you just said, it's a great movie. It's a lot of fun, and I totally dig it. This one comes from Raymond Starkey. Man, I keep getting phone calls while I'm on the show. Raymond Starkey says, "So Rob, it's been a hot minute since my last letter. As you may know, the lockdown of the UK has been brutal. Sometimes I think I'm living in V for Vendetta, High Chancellor Boris turning 15 and 16-year-olds into fingermen by having them rat on good old mom and dad for breaking lockdown. But that's not what this letter is for. Oh no, this letter is a profound thank you from the bottom of my heart for keeping me and many others in the Post-Geek singularity sane." Well, thank you for that. Anyway, I think Lois Protheros is on, so I will sign off. Is that Prothero? Louis Prothero? England prevails. Well, thank you, Raymond. What a nice thank you. I very much appreciate that. You know, I've received a lot of letters like that where people are like, thank you for, and John too, thank you for sticking with doing these shows during lockdown and keeping it all going. I mean, part of the reason I do the shows is because if I didn't, I think I too would go crazy here in lockdown. And it's been fun. It's been fun doing shows with Elizabeth. By the way, we finally got some merch, Elizabeth's merch. I really love these sweatshirts, these T-Public, or the Teespring, the merch that you can get on the YouTube page. They make really good shirts, and I love them. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. But it's been fun to do these shows, man, and it's kind of kept me sane too. It's given me a little bit of structure to the day. Otherwise, like, I just hang out and watch movies all day, unless I had to work. Like yesterday, I had to do some Netflix work. Thank God. And here's another thing. Steve Foley just writes in. Steve Foley says, "Hi Rob, I know I messaged you about this privately, but I wanted to let the rest of the Post-Geek Singularity community know just how much I appreciate and thank you for being the catalyst and inspiration, along with John Campea, for 3 super fun projects I've created over the last year. As many of you know, I created and submitted an animated short film to the IICFF. I wrote and submitted a short story called The Fallen for the upcoming short story contest, and now I've finished my first novel, Droplets for the Soul. That's a great title. Droplets for the Soul, a YA fantasy sci-fi novel of 70,000 words. I found a small company that liked the manuscript and agreed to publish. And while that seems like amazing news, unlike the large publishing houses, there are still costs that I have to cover in order to get the book printed, published, and on shelves, both brick and mortar and online, and properly marketed. I've created a Kickstarter campaign to help cover the costs. I hope you'll share it with the Post-Geek Singularity community. Sure, why not? I'll do that. For something that you made that's yours? Hell yeah, I will. Here you go. So I'll put that in the live chat. It's there. Anyway, Rob, I'll end this shameless bit of self-promotion by once again thanking you for encouraging us to get out there and create awesomely fun projects that until now only lived in our imaginations and would otherwise never have been realized until you effectively gave us permission to get out there and just do it. Forever in your debt. Live long and prosper, Steve Foley. Well, Steve, don't thank me. I mean, I might have been the catalyst. As I've always said, I just throw the parties. You know, I leave it up to you. You got to come and walk. You got to go to the party, walk in the door, and mingle with the folks here. And I look, if it's something you already wanted to do this, you just hadn't. And if nothing makes me happier, and I don't think anything makes John Campea happier, and I know few things made John Schnepp happier than other people's creativity. And I think if nothing else, if there's one thing that I can impart to anybody, like what is the point of this channel? It would be to inspire other people's creativity. I mean, I love it. You have no idea how much joy it gave me to watch every one of the films for the Intergalactic Imagination Connoisseurs Film Festival. Every one of them. You know, whether it was Wiener Kill, or whether it was Ruin Nation, or B.L. Alley's The Trip. It didn't. All of them. You know, anything that came in, I couldn't believe the stunning amount of creativity that was on display. And I've actually gone back and watched a number of movies quite a few times. And I can't imagine. I haven't read any of the short stories yet. but there's a lot more than I thought that there was going to be, and it's amazing. And I can't wait. I mean, I really think that when all is said and done, we're going to have a hardcover book, that we're going to publish with everybody's stories in it. And maybe the people that watch this channel, maybe we're the only ones who are going to buy this book, or maybe we're the only ones that are going to read it. But still, I think that it's just amazing. And I would like to keep that going. We'll have another film. We haven't even wrapped up the first film festival. We're a month behind, and I blame myself, but I kind of wanted more people to see the movies, and I'm going to make a real effort to sort of, I told people that I wanted at least until the end of February to have all the movies exclusively on my YouTube channel, and then people can post them wherever they want. I'm still going to leave the movies all up, obviously, but I want to get more eyeballs on them and promote the film festival, and because I think everybody's work deserves and deservedly so needs to be seen. But I love thank you for the kind words, Steve, and I'm glad you're doing stuff. I think it's like even doing shows with Az, like Prisoner Reviews. Now we're doing Fully Articulated, and we're doing Hot Toys on his channel. I mean, I want to remind everybody next noon Pacific time, 8 o'clock Greenwich Mean Time, next Wednesday, Az is going to give away a hot toy valued up to $300, and during the show, and you get to pick it. It's whatever Sideshow Toys. They're the official North American distributor. Whatever they have, you can go there if it's available, and it's $300 or less. And that's a lot of the hot toys. You can't get an Ironman die-cast figure for that, but still pretty cool. And we're going to give that away on the show live. And it should be fun because Dan Frega and Nerdrotic are going to be on the channel, both big toy collectors themselves. And I think it's going to be a heck of a lot of fun. So join us. And that's something that we wouldn't have been doing unless there was quarantine and lockdown. And I think it's been great. Dean Mikitich says, "Hi, Rob and the Post-Geek Singularity. Thanks for your answer on my letter on remakes. This got me thinking of two things. First, we all know that the decision makers in Hollywood are suits that have, for the most part, come from Ivy League schools that studied business. They like to look at spreadsheets to see what will work and what won't. They're also adverse to taking risks. Basically, they want to play it safe. Yet in the 70s and 80s, the suits that were running the studios were willing to take risks, especially with the filmmakers that were coming out of the University of Southern California School of Cinematic Arts, among others. This is why so many films that came out in that era, and I would include the 90s as well, are so iconic. They also pushed boundaries of filmmaking. So what happened? Why did the suits stop taking risks? The excuses that Hollywood is a business won't fly with me. It's been a business since the first studios formed. Is it because films are getting more expensive to make? Yes, a lot of that is exactly what it is. I don't think so, because that has always been the case, not like it is now. If a film is good, it will make its money back and then some. We may not always do it at the box office, but it'll make its money back. We know that Blade Runner and The Thing were flops when they came out in '82, but they have become cult classics since hitting physical media. Both films have been released multiple times and have not really gone out of production. If they were not making money, why keep putting them back out? Yes, I know other factors have to be considered, such as the penny pushers at the studios adding costs to a film that was never part of its production, a la Star Trek the Motion Picture. Well, hang on a second. I'll get back to that. But even with that in mind, I find it very hard to believe that even with these added costs that Blade Runner and The Thing are now not making a profit. Now, I don't know if the studio heads of the 70s and 80s were passionate about film or just looking to make a quick buck, but they were willing to take risks, which brings me back to the question, what changed? And with the way things are currently changing with theatrical releases and everything up in the air, could we see the studios start to take risks again? The other thing I was thinking about was the golden year of cinema, 1982. I think we can all agree this was the greatest year for film seen to date, well, at least for imagination connoisseurs it was, with such great releases as Blade Runner, The Thing, Star Trek The Wrath of Khan, E.T., First Blood, Poltergeist, Fast Times at Ridgemont High, 48 Hours, Tootsie, The Dark Crystal, Tron, Conan the Barbarian, Rocky III, An Officer and a Gentleman. Don't forget The Road Warrior, which was released in the United States in '82. And that's just some of the great films that came out. We'll never see a year like it. We've never seen a year like it since. Rob, do you think we'll ever see a year like 1982 again? Peace and long life, Dean Mikitich. Well, no. The short answer to that question is no. Here's what's really happened to the motion picture business, the studio motion picture business. Nowadays, foreign box office, worldwide box office is just as, if not more important than domestic box office. And the problem with that is you have to make movies that travel around the world. And the movies that are most easily digested around the world are action adventures, big tentpole properties. And so that's why the studios are making those movies. The economics of the movie business have completely changed. Movies didn't used to be thought of as necessarily a global product. They were, most movies, the studios up to a certain point were only focusing on basically the Western world. And all of that's changed. All of that's out the window. That's why, Star Wars is not well known in China. Star Wars hot toys don't sell in China because Star Wars did not leave some kind of lingering footprint in the Chinese market because they couldn't get it back, and it wasn't allowed, and it had no. So nowadays the studios they're making a global product. They're marketing on a global scale. And they're spending money that's going to provide them, when they're making, whether it's the MCU or whether they're making some giant fantasy epic, they're not interested in making films that aren't global hits. And those global hits are expensive. They cost a lot of money. And it's problematic in the sense that, you go back, like I used to I loved the Jack Ryan movies, beginning with Hunt for Red October. But now, a Jack Ryan movie is probably never going to get made again because now it's a TV show. John Krasinski is playing Jack Ryan now. It's a TV show, and those kinds of stories, political thrillers. What studio is going to make a political thriller? And if you make a political thriller like a Tom Clancy movie, unless they're going to go back and do Red Storm Rising, which I still think they could do, which is about World War III, and that would pretty much sell all over the world. It's not a Jack Ryan novel. But you could probably get away with that. But a studio making a character-based movie like that, they're just not going to do it. That's where TV has picked up the slack. And there's been some great political thrillers. The BBC's Bodyguard with Rob Stark, with Richard Madden. That was very cool. I mean, I would love to have seen that movie, 25 years ago. But it really is the economics of the business has changed. And I do think that another problem is that, and this was true when I was at Warner Brothers 30 years ago, somebody who has an Ivy League business degree, because the movie studios are owned by larger corporations, this is the kind of hire that is a no-brainer for large corporations. They want Ivy League educated business people, preferably you either with a master's or something like that. And so on paper, these are the kind of hires. It doesn't necessarily matter who doesn't love the movie business. But if you went to Harvard or you went to Yale or you went to Princeton or you went to, I guess, Stanford, take your pick. If you went to any of those schools and you've graduated, you've been papered well, and you've earned that. That's the kind of people they want to hire. So that's who you're going to be dealing with. And the problem also is that there is so much pressure to perform that you can't fail. Hollywood is a risk-averse business, and at the studios, now they're spending more money than ever. You cannot fail. One failure could destroy your whole career, so there is no more risk-taking at the studios. What was happening in the 70s, it wasn't just these maverick directors, the kids that are coming in and taking over. The studio film business was dying on the vine, especially in the mid to late 60s. It really started to go south. We're mired civil rights and Vietnam and the social upheaval and tremendous social change. Studio pictures were really, this is not where the youth market was at anymore. And so it wasn't until you had maverick directors come in and make things like, Dennis Hopper making Easy Rider, and what Coppola and Spielberg and Lucas and Martin Scorsese and what the movies that were being made were really changing the face of Hollywood. And a lot of them were these renegade directors, and they became counterculture hits or cultural hits. But you had people that they were mavericks that were making these decisions, like Bob Evans over at Paramount, and doing things like Love Story. Paramount was having books. They were actually being written. They were making the movie, and the book was being written at the same time. So then these books would come out, cross-promoting them. It was really interesting. Love Story, The Godfather, they were doing some crazy stuff back then. And, you had auteurist directors doing things like Polanski doing Chinatown, Robert Towne writing Chinatown for Polanski. And it was just a different time. And now the business is very, 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 very different. So, and all of the adult fare has migrated over to streaming services. No studio would have made The Queen's Gambit as a feature film. I mean, not now, not in this day and age, but, if you want a literary adaptation, it's got to be David Fincher doing The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo or Gone Girl. Then you get a studio going, okay, well, we've had a hit in another medium. This book was a big bestseller, and we'll turn it into a movie because, again, risk averse. It's already a known quantity. So the world is just a different place. And I think that's what the streaming services are coming to fill that void. They're making all kinds of crazy stuff. And I think it's fantastic. So, yeah. It's just a different thing. This one comes from KO. And KO says, why is nobody today mentioning someone who is a fantastic cartoonist illustrator like Richard Corbin, who made Den? Den was famously adapted in the heavy metal feature film in 1981. Richard Corbin passed away recently. And Den, abilities: peak human strength, speed, durability, agility, reflexes, and senses great martial arts, great martial artist and hand-to-hand combatant, prodigiously sexually endowed, and he has a bigger man unit than Superman and Batman together. And then we have Stefano Tamburini and Tonino Liberatore, ran Xerox, have robot strength, much stronger than Batman, small unit when slack, but very big when he is erect. And remember, this is just a history of some old blocks back in the old days and good cartoonists who love big cock, but they're all dead now. Rest in peace. I just love this cartoon, and I also love big units. Okay? He didn't say units. I wasn't going to say the C word over and over and over again. But thanks for writing in, KO. It's always good to remember Richard Corbin. And you're right. I mean, back in the day, European comics, we would get very well-endowed men and the women that love them. So, hey, it was I like that you wrote in to honor Richard Corbin. That's very, very cool. This one comes from Jared Snyder. A Teller of Tales. After the I read this yesterday. And I will not read this again today, but I read that yesterday. I thought that was really good. Andrew Chatton writes in and says, hi from Australia. With Disney Plus' new Star offering launching February 23rd here in Australia, Disney have announced the starting lineup for launch day. Some notable titles include classics like Alien and Die Hard to old cinema greats like Cleopatra and Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. But there's also a plethora of TV series as well being added from the Fox library, like 24, Alias, Bob's Burgers, Family Guy, and The X-Files. Being an international subscriber is going to pay big rewards moving forward. Are you aware of what Disney will be doing to integrate the Fox library in North America? You know what? I don't know. I mean, it's still kind of up in the air. Are they going to use Hulu to do that? I know that there's more stuff being put on Disney Plus all the time, but that's a good question. I don't know. There's talk about they're doing something with their R-rated section. You got to have like a password to get in, so they're going to have their R-rated movies up there. It's going to be interesting to see how it all shakes out, but I don't know exactly what they are planning. But it'll be interesting to see how they accept it down under. So yeah. And let's see. This one comes from Omar94. Omar94 says, hi, Rob, moderators in the Post-Geek Singularity. This letter is something for you, your moderators, and members of the Post-Geek Singularity. They can discuss and comment about either in the live chat or the comments section, since I'm not sure about it. I was reading some articles and reviews for the 1993 John McTiernan film The Last Action Hero, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, with some saying how the film was ahead of its time. That had me thinking about whether that's true. On one hand, the concept of the film is actually quite clever about being placed into an action movie and having the predictable tropes and cliches being brought up. On the other hand, even if it was made today exactly as it is, I don't know the film would be better received than it was back in 93. I think the movie's just all right, since there's definitely a lot of ideas, moments, and scenes, but they don't just all come together very well. Like, why is there an animated cat? The unnecessary appearances from Humphrey Bogart, Robert Patrick as the T-1000, and Sharon Stone as Catherine Trammell. The whole magic movie ticket thing was something I had a bit of a problem with, and the whole thing near the end when Ian McKellen as Death from Ingmar Bergman's Seventh Seal comes out of the movie, which made no sense. That's why I'm not sure if the movie would be better received if it came out today than in 1993, since it would still have the same problems. As I said earlier, this is something you, your moderators, and members of the Post-Geek Singularity can discuss and comment about either in the chat or in the comments section, since I'm not sure about it. Thanks, and live long and prosper. Well, Omar, I think the problem with The Last Action Hero is, like you pointed out, man, it's overly stuffed. Overly stuffed. So, yeah, it just, I think the script really killed it. I think it really did. So it wasn't, you can tell like 10 different writers worked on that film. It just didn't work. It didn't work. I mean, some of it was kind of fun. The idea was fun, but it was all over the map. And I don't think it really could decide what it wanted to be. This comes in from Jamie Wright. Hi, Rob. On previous shows, you've mentioned you like skiing. I love skiing. I've been skiing and snowboarding 2 times a year every year since I was 2, and in my life, I've never really found any skiing films which are very good. I was wondering if you could recommend some kick-ass skiing or snowboarding films that I could watch. Also, when you ski, is there a certain playlist you listen to keep you pumped? And if so, what songs are in there? Many thanks, Jamie. Well, I have to tell you, I haven't been skiing in a very long time. Not since my ex-wife and I used to go skiing a lot. We would go to like Switzerland to go skiing, and I loved it. But when I skied, if I was listening to music, I usually always was listening to soundtrack music, and that was pretty much universal. I didn't listen to songs. It was all orchestral soundtrack music. I listened to a lot of James Bond ski themes, like from On Her Majesty's Secret Service, or Bond 77 from Spy Who Loved Me, or the Bill Conti's music from For Your Eyes Only, which still that movie has the best Bond ski sequence in it. So I listened to a lot of that. Now, you should seek out movies by a guy named Warren Miller. Warren Miller was an incredible, I think he passed away. He would just go all over the world and make ski movies. They're hypnotic. You can probably go onto YouTube and see them. Just look up Warren Miller. I mean, he made some incredible skiing movies. So check that out. Yeah, so there you go. Yeah, thanks for writing in. Appreciate it. Let's see. Well, let's jump and see what are you guys saying? I don't know, but let's find out. Who's here? I always go down. Let's see. Ooh, even before Willow, there's a lot of people wrote in today. Okay. Jared Snyder. Jared Snyder says, well, actually, Jonathan Rose sent in a super chat and says, have you and Az considered starting a Facebook group to share collection pics? Hot toys, 6-scale, articulated, and more. Doesn't have to be Facebook. We've thought about it, but I think, there is the Post-Geek Singularity Facebook page, and if you want to send pictures of your collection, we'll put them up on our website at the Burnettwork.net website. So, Jonathan, write in there and check it out. Jared Snyder sends in a tip and says, 1 of 2. Hi, Rob. For the first time in 5 seasons of The Expanse, I have some disagreements. First, they have simplified Drummer's Belter Brogue, and this only diminishes what is one of the best and most complicated characters in sci-fi. I tend to agree with that. Actually, there's no other, or maybe it's down here. Nope, you didn't. It doesn't seem to have the second part of that. I agree. I love the first part of The Expanse this year, but I found the last 3 episodes to be really this story with Naomi and Aros, and it's just there's so much. The universe had become so big and broad, And I feel the last couple of episodes have been very, very small, even though I love what's been going on with Amos on Earth. But, Alex and Bobby have been in the ship for the last 3 episodes, and you've barely seen them. And James Holden, what's he been doing? Nothing. And there's only one more episode left. And I feel that they've diminished her, and I don't disagree with you. Elizabeth became a member. Jason Webster became a member. So thank you for becoming members. Delosa Raptor sends in a tip and says, Wanda wields the same power as the Mind Stone. She used it to destroy the stone. My theory, she is now using it to power Vision. She is alive by her powers, but he has brain damage of sorts, and she's brainwashing him like with the rest of the town. I could see that. Chloe says, at the time, Clint Eastwood turned down Once Upon a Time in the West to be part of Paint Your Wagon, ending his run and time with Sergio, but it was during his time on Paint Your Wagon that Clint Eastwood decided to become more involved with the movie-making process. For the set of Paint Your Wagon was such chaos that Clint Eastwood decided then and there to start his own production company, making him the director that we've come to know for such films as Unforgiven. By the way, we will be doing Unforgiven tonight for Western Weeks on Whining About Movies, which is very exciting. Louise Sparrow says, a small thank you for bringing Star Crash into my life. Well, Louise, I am so happy that you have discovered the singular joy that is Star Crash. That makes me so happy, and you obviously took it in the spirit with which it's meant to be seen. Matt Smith sends in a tip and says, on this illustrious day 36 years ago, I made my grand entrance on the stage of life. I hope to live another 36 and to collect many more Starship toys and Steelbook physical media. Any advice for me as I enter the downslope of my 30s? Cheers, Rob. Don't think of it as a downslope, man. It's all just a journey. There is no downslope. And the journey, just move through life, do what you want, work hard, and hold on to your passions. And remember, don't allow yourself to get bored and be brought down, because we live in a glorious world and there's so much of it you still need to go see. And that's another thing. Travel, go drunk, get drunk with experience, see the world when this damn pandemic is over. Willow sends in a tip and says, while there is much debate surrounding Star Trek's economy, I do think it's apparent that most humans don't care about making money or getting rich. If people aren't being motivated by greed and wealth, what is it that keeps them striving on? Well, I think it's very simple. The universe itself. I mean, I think that if you're part of a spacefaring civilization and you could join Starfleet and your job is to go out and explore the cosmos and see what's out there, the endless infinitude would be endlessly fascinating. What better things to do than that? I mean, I can't imagine if there was such a thing as Starfleet. I know for me, I would want to spend the rest of my life exploring the infinitude of creation. I wouldn't want to sit at home and collect movies and action figures and toys, and I'd want to be out there, where every day is something new. Every day is exciting. I think that's what makes life worth living. And sure, I'm sure there are business people. Like, look at the Ferengi. There are all kinds of business people all through the Star Trek universe. But for me, I think that's what would keep me going, is the infinitude of the cosmic void. I'd want to see what was out there. Roger Haynes sends in a super chat. Well, thank you, Roger. I appreciate that. Jeff Yerke and Mrs. Y sends in a tip and says, hey, Rob, just a quick Friday note to mention verisimilitude. Last night's film had it in spades. John Ford's World War II film, They Were Expendable. The story of PT boats in the Pacific. This was a very realistic look at war. No miniatures, just the Duke. Second, Mrs. Y and I were thrilled by the 3rd episode of WandaVision, loved the Brady Bunch art direction, and the SWAT reality breakout near the end. Let's see where this goes. The Yerkman. Well, Mr. Yerkman, you and your wife are going to love episode 4 because it's told from a different perspective than we've seen for the last 3 episodes, And boy, it answers a lot of questions, and it poses a lot of questions. You will have a good time. William Powell sends in a super chat and says, the biggest advantage the MCU has is that their management doesn't negatively meddle with the product. Absolutely. I mean, their management is the people that are driving the product. And the thing is, they already know. There is so much that Kevin Feige does right for the MCU. The creative people he finds, the clever way. I mean, that's why I look, Chloe Zhao, who directed The Eternals, has Nomadland out now, which is getting Oscar buzz and all kinds of end-of-the-year critical kudos. And the fact that he tapped her to make a film, I mean, amazing. He knows what's up. And, you cannot... I cannot say enough, but you're absolutely right. Their management knows what's going on. And Disney takes a hands-off approach. Stubble McShave says that WandaVision is a perfect example of why established franchises are best with weekly releases. Imagine all the speculation we wouldn't have with a binge release. We just play the next episode at once. Non-established franchises can still benefit from binging. Stubble, I couldn't agree with you more. They knew exactly what was going to happen. They knew half the audience for the MCU would have been like, what is this shit? Every episode. They needed that. They knew they were going to stir up the pot. They knew it. And they did a beautiful job of it too. And then, can you imagine if you're binging WandaVision and you're not getting a chance to think about and speculate and wonder, and you just watch it and you'd be like, like today, as the new episode was unfolding, I was like a kid just bouncing up and down going, oh my God. It was so smart. The revelations were so interesting. And the characters, Kat Dennings was great. I mean, she's the new star of the show. And Monica, what a great character she is. I was so excited. And it wouldn't have been nearly as cool if it was all there to binge all at once. I totally agree with you. Sheriff Carl sends in a tip and says, the first episode of WandaVision was like a cup of coffee. Second, with a little whiskey added. The third felt I lit up a doob to have with my drink. Today's episode was like spiking that boozy coffee with some of Hoffman's magic potion. I am fucking high on this show. Sheriff Carl, I am right there with you. I absolutely 100%. It was amazing. I absolutely loved it. Sante says, why do you think Catherine Hahn doesn't get more kudos for her performance on WandaVision? I think she steals the show when she's on. Just my opinion. Well, Sante, I think you're right. I think the problem is up until now, she's basically playing this sort of one-note character. We don't know a lot about her. And when she does come on, she's kind of doing the same thing. But I can't wait to see where that goes. If she's Agatha Harkness or whatever's going to happen with her, I don't know. But I think by the end of the show, we're all going to be like, again, the acting, the casting of the MCU, man. Oh, my God, the casting on this show, so good. And I think Catherine Hahn is going to be revealed as absolutely one of the heavy hitters that made this show work as well as it did. Stubble McShave says, speaking of Paul Bettany, he and Stellan Skarsgård are good friends. When Paul and his wife had their son, they named him Stellan. Paul mentioned this to Stellan Skarsgård, whereupon he answered, oh, cool. Does that mean I get to suck on your wife's tits? Well, his wife is Jennifer Connelly. And if you've ever seen The Hot Spot, definitely got me hot. That's very funny. That's leave it to a Swede, right? Bobby Hatch Qual, Bob Qual's here. R&B, did you watch Legion? Yes. Not MCU, but still a Marvel property. That show got way out. It really got way out, and I loved it. I thought it was great. Love the first 2 seasons. P.S. Darktown Strutters is still on Prime. P.P.S. As you might guess, I'm on Team Kong. I got to watch Darktown Strutters. I will have to check that out. Of course you're on Team Kong. I mean, you made a Megarilla and put it on the top of your house. I would have it no other way. Jmeister25 sent in a super chat and says, that was fantastic. Oh my God, that was so good. That's how it's written. That was fantastic. Oh my God, that was so good. Dialogue was a little flat with the FBI scenes in the first part, but it was effing incredible. I didn't think the dialogue was flat. I liked everybody. I thought the dialogue was great. Finding out about Sword. You know, I think it was interesting. I think it was Jeremy Johns. Jeremy Johns mentioned, like, where's Sword been? But Sword is not like S.H.I.E.L.D. Sword deals with extraterrestrial activities, so that's probably why, you know, we haven't really dealt with it much. Circus of Five sends in a oh wait, hang on. Andrew Christie sends in a tip and says, "Hey Rob, after yesterday's chat, I checked out Kevin Rubin." Wait a minute, Adam. It keeps going down. Andrew Christie says, "WandaVision has me second guessing that Endgame was the climax of the MCU, never to be surpassed. What are they building towards over the next 10 or 15 years? Ooh boy." Well, you know, if they're bringing in Mephisto as the next big bad, which I mean, they're going to go into the supernatural realm. If Mephisto is going to be there, Mephisto is again, when I couldn't understand how they were going to put Thor, Iron Man, and Captain America in a movie and make you believe that they could all work together, I have a similar problem going. I mean, Mephisto's been around the Marvel universe for a long time. And I like Mephisto stories when they're done well, but in the MCU, that's crazy. But we're gonna see. I mean, if they can do it, if that's what they're doing in this show, and they're leading into Spider-Man 3 and the Multiverse of Madness with Doctor Strange, I'm very curious to see where all of this is going. But I'm very, very excited. Circus of Five says, "Hey Rob, after yesterday's chat, I checked out Kevin Rubio's short film Hashtag, starring the wonderful Gigi Edgley, playing on Dust. It was fabulous. Highly recommended to the Post-Geek Singularity. I actually recommend Dust as well. A great platform." Well, Circus of Five, check out Skyfighter, the science fiction movie Skyfighter that I edited. Kevin Rubio, he made Hashtag with Ben Alpe, but Skyfighter I made with Lucas Kendall, and he directed it, wrote and directed it, and you can see that also on Dust. James Taylor sends in a tip and says, "Hey Rob, I wanted to follow up on my Stargate questions from a couple of weeks ago, as I've just finished season 1 and I'm really liking it. I was just wondering if you had continued watching it. I haven't after the first couple episodes, and your thoughts on it, as I know you recently started watching. I just have to catch up with it because there's so much to watch. But I was liking it. You know, I was really surprised that I was really enjoying the universe, and I really was enjoying, like, all the characters and the base camp and how the mythology was starting to unfold. I thought it was really, really interesting. But I have to go in and watch the first season, but that's about as far as I can. That's all I can tell you now. Stubble McShave says, "Concerning soundtrack music for skiing, I think the intro theme for Where Eagles Dare would be great for hitting the slopes. The drums in the beginning would be great for the anticipation, and then the brassy sound would be great for the slopes themselves." You're probably right about that. I think that's a great idea. I love that idea, as a matter of fact. Why not? That would be fantastic. Andrew Christie became a member. Shook Nasty became a member. That's a great name. That's a great online name, Shook Nasty. I love that. Jake Damon sent in a super chat. Well, thanks, Jake. I appreciate that. "Hey, Rob, for the last few weeks, I've been buying up CRT TVs. You know, the old ones, not the flat kind, laugh out loud, for the express purpose of playing WandaVision through them. So imagine my delight with episode 4. That was something that Jeremy Johns was commenting on, too, that old school gamers are always buying CRT sets. It's very funny. Emil Johansson says, "Not going to spoil, but I think WandaVision will explain stuff in Spider-Man Far From Home. Some article that said this takes place before." Oh, yeah, this WandaVision, we know when it takes place now. It takes place 3 weeks after the blip. It takes place 3 weeks after in the end of Endgame, Avengers Endgame. So it takes place way before Spider-Man Far From Home. So there you go. It takes place before Spider-Man Far From Home. Way before, actually. So there you go. Devin Hilton sends in a super chat and says, there should be a movie made of the Press Your Luck scandal. The guy was interesting, to say the least. A lot of layers. I'm sure there will be. That could very well be something that we could see happening. I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised, Devin. Leandro Arena, that's a cool name, send in a super chat. Well, thank you so much for that. Thanks for supporting the channel, but no question. Leandro Arena, what a cool name. These are great names. I don't know if that's a real name, but if that's a real name, what a cool, Leandro is a great name. I love that name. Well, listen, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, gentle beings, kind folks across these 28 known galaxies, I'm going to cut this show short. We're going to be back in 3 hours with whining about Elizaviews, whining about movies. I mean, look at this. How great does ZVS's artwork look? I mean, look at that. How cool is that? I quite enjoy it. And it's fantastic. So, and it's great to have it on a t-shirt. Anyway, where was I? Yes, I want to thank my moderating staff. I want to thank Mike Bodden. I want to thank Greg Smith. I want to thank the Richard. I want to thank, did I say, I should thank the Richard. I don't even know if Greg Smith's here. I want to thank Bunyan Snipe. I want to thank Justin Toner. I want to thank everybody else who's here. Joshua Levesque is here. And thanks for being the moderators that you are. Remember, you can always go to the Post-Geek Singularity Facebook page, or you can go to the Whining About Movies Facebook page, or you can go to the, well, there's many places that you can go, to the Fully Articulated Facebook page and the Let's Get Physical Media Facebook page, and all of those things, and sign up. And if you don't want to go to YouTube, or you don't want to go to Facebook, you're on YouTube, you can go to the Burnettwork.net website and communicate with us directly, send us letters, see all the poster entries for the Post-Geek Singularity Film Festival that we are now throwing on the YouTube page. Check out those films. There's some great ones. And there's 52 movies up so far, and I want to get the last of them up. I said I was going to get them up last weekend, but I hurt my leg, which, by the way, is still definitely not 100%. So, anyway. Templar U says, hey again, Rob, would you ever be interested in doing a fan film on YouTube? If so, which one? I'm planning on making one. Well, I think my days making fan films are over. I showed yesterday. I showed the Vulcan scene. That was the first scene that I completed. Turns out the only scene I completed from the Axonar feature film, which I opened the show with yesterday. But I don't think I'd ever do another fan film. But since you asked the question, if I did do another fan film, what might that fan film be? That is a good question. I think if I was going to make a fan film, I still would want to stick to doing a Star Trek fan film, only because that's what I feel like I didn't get to finish what I'd started, and I don't like that. So I would go back and make a Star Trek fan film. Most likely. I mean, that's most likely what I would do. Well, anyway, join us here in 3 hours where Elizabeth and I are going to discuss Clint Eastwood's masterpiece and the Academy Award winner for Best Picture from 1992, Unforgiven. And be like the Schofield Kid. I can't wait to see that movie again. It's so great. I'm going to go watch it right now with Elizabeth, and then we're going to talk about it. We're going to drink wine and talk about it. So there you go. So join us tonight on Whining About Movies as we delve into Clint Eastwood's Unforgiven. And with that, I say, remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear, and all you have to do is listen. And with that, I say to all of you, say it with me now, have a better day.